Welcome to the All Things AI podcast. I'm your host, Ishan, and this is the 26th episode of the podcast. Today, I'm grateful to have here with me Uvika Sharma, who's a data and AI strategist working to unlock transformational insights for her clients, including certain Fortune 500 companies. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Ishan.
Of course, yeah, I'm looking forward to today's discussion. And especially considering that you're consulting for certain companies, I'm really excited to see the advice that you give and how you leverage AI to improve their profits and other aspects of a business. So, just as an overview, what are the key criteria you consider when advising a company on adopting artificial intelligence?
When advising companies on adopting AI, there are a few different criteria that is recommended for companies to look at. So, number one is business objective. So, I like to think about the what, why, who. They're my favorite three W's. So, when thinking about AI, it's important to ensure that the use of AI is actually going to align with your strategic goals, right? So, what is it that you want to do with it? Why you want to do with it? And who is it, that's going to be impacted by it? So, for example, if a retail company is looking to improve customer experience, or whether to personalize, recommendation and how, Amazon uses machine learning to suggest products and customer behavior. So it's very important, I think, to just take a step back and see that, okay, how AI actually fits into that overall business objective and goal that the company has. And then, of course, you also have to ensure that the use of the technology actually aligns with the core values of the company. So it's very important. And the next thing I recommend for corporations is that you have to see whether you have data, so data availability and the quality of the data. As you know that no data, no AI.
Yeah.
So reliable data is actually very important. So I'm sure you've used Uber. Many people use Uber, and of course, like Google. So their algorithms, use high quality data and real time data, right, in order to predict, whether it is traffic and when Uber is trying to recommend, a price, right? It's using historical data as well as like real time data, right? So with high quality data, it's able to do those things. But if you don't have good data, the models are not going to function properly. Then the next thing is important to look at is the infrastructure and the resources. So having the right infrastructure is actually very important. The good thing is that nowadays, you have cloud platforms like AWS and Google and Microsoft Azure, which offer like scalable processing power and AI tools. So it kind of reduces that burden of having that upfront investment, especially like for small, startups. But so that's important, right? But even for large corporations, it's very important to think about the infrastructure and resources that are going to be needed in order to, adopt AI. And the next thing that is important is the scalability and the ROI, right? So yeah, you can work on a POC or proof of concept, but you also have to think in the grand scheme of things that how am I going to scale, right? This AI project. And you also have to justify the return on investment. You want to make sure that you are implementing AI for the right reasons and it's actually going to reap benefits. So companies like GE and other manufacturing companies, right? They invest into AI for predictive maintenance models, right? Because if you were to do those predictive maintenance, without the use of AI, it's actually very costly, right? So for those companies, it makes a lot of sense, right? In order to monitor and predict turbine maintenance needs. And the next thing is, I think it's ethics and compliance. You have to make sure that you are being ethical in implementing AI, right, you have to think about your fairness, your privacy, and that actually goes to my, comment about that third W, right? Like the who is going to be impacted, right? Your customers, your employees, and you need to make sure that the technology is being fair, right? You're not perpetuating any biases, right? So that's important. And then you need to make sure you're complying, right? You're not getting into trouble because, there are a plethora of, rules and regulations, that are coming out. Oh my God, even I have a tough time keeping track of them. So I think I would say like these are some of the core things that a company should be thinking about before they even get onto the AI bandwagon.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's very much a multifaceted approach because some of the things that you're mentioning, like no data, no AI, I think that's a rule of thumb. But the other thing with that is what type of data do you have? How representative is your data of whatever case or problem you're trying to solve? Those are also like really important. And I think that's the interesting part about your job is like you have to balance all these concerns and then at the same time make sure that the company can actually see that ROI on AI. And I think when you look at like return on investment or just AI in general, one thing that I've been picking up on, and I'm sure like you and other people might also be seeing, is that like across the industry, there's a lot of companies that are saying we use AI for this, we use AI for that. It's a new trend. It's certainly a really powerful technology. So I think seeing different prongs of integrating AI is really interesting. So I want to ask, based on your work in startups and other companies at that stage, why do you believe almost every tech-based startup specifically is trying to leverage AI as opposed to like just general technology that we have?
Ah, so I'm definitely seeing a lot of companies are, using the phrase AI. People are even, rebranding the companies as
Yeah.
something as like dot AI, right? It's been like, the AI is the cool kid around the block and
Yeah,
everybody wants to
literally.
be associated with it. But I feel it's okay. Look, it's good to leverage technology, but it should be incorporated for the right reasons, right? And most importantly, to leverage it to provide the value, right? And how it can be leveraged to solve the pain points, right? And ultimately achieving, the core objectives. So for tech companies, definitely, it makes sense to incorporate AI, and no doubt AI offers a lot of benefits, right? So we know that people and companies can leverage AI to come up with insights, and companies are using it for personalization. So it definitely gives startups a unique advantage. There are these companies, like I think there is this retail company, Stitch Fix.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
a fashion startup. Yeah. So it uses machine learning to personalize clothing recommendations, for its customers. So which really sets them apart, like, from some of these highly competitive retail space. So I think so they are using it, for the right, reason. And then now companies realize, right, that data is like the new oil, right? And they're using it as a key resource. So I think it was last year I discovered that my son, who's a middle schooler, he's using this tool Grammarly, right? In school, and I had heard of it, and then I played around a little bit with it, and I was just amazed, how amazing the tool is, and how they are, improving the output, and how they help people when they're using the tool is basically the massive corpus of data, right, that they have collected, right? So using like the millions of text inputs. And they use that to constantly improve their AI and, make writing suggestions. So, they are using it for the right reason. And now tech, has this barrier to entry, right, that has been reduced. So pre-trained models are available. So companies, small startups can start using it to, do rapid prototyping, and these machine learning models and computing resources that are readily available without investing too much money. So that has, they say that they've reduced the barrier to entry, right? We are in this era, democratization of, access to AI. So it definitely makes a lot of sense for companies like tech companies to use it because it's available, right? You don't have to make, heavy investment. You can quickly churn like a proof of concept, or your minimum viable product, right? And then there is also this expectation from VCs when you go, fundraising. So if you are a tech company, many times I hear, right, that okay, if you're a tech company, are you using AI, right? If you're not using AI, it's almost like, why aren't you using AI,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I think it's various reasons, right? No doubt it's good, it's the barrier to entry have reduced, right? It offers like a competitive edge. So I think the advantages are, a lot. So whether you are baking it into your product or service or offering, or companies can even use it, internally to improve their lives, right? Like when you don't have to like track expenses, manually, you have like these expense tracking softwares, and you
Yeah.
can actually
Absolutely.
literally take a picture, and it's just gonna, Expensify and a bunch of other these tools that are just gonna streamline your expenses, and you don't have to worry about it. So I'm like a big proponent that, I think AI should be used by startups, whether in the product offering or, to help them with their internal processes.
Yeah. Um, I like many of the points that you brought up. I think like the way that this AI technology is being used, and just because of how open source it's being, I'm not saying that like the digital divide certainly isn't going to be worsened because there's new technology. But what I really think is if someone that maybe isn't in like a big business, if like a small business owner or someone wants to invest that time in AI and learn how they can use it to compete with bigger players in the industry to increase things like marketing and get that outreach, I think this is a tool that's so powerful that it's going to help people that are motivated, like I guess like break those gaps that they've been facing in the past. And I think that's one of the most appreciable parts about this as of now. I also want to shed light though on one specific circumstance with Amazon, which is one of the biggest tech and obviously retail companies in the world. And there was a scandal, I think it was at some point last year, where they said they had an AI grocery store where you could just walk out with whatever you wanted to. And once you walked out, it's just supposed to like once you walk out of the store, it's yours and it automatically charges you. So the thing with that was they're saying it's an AI grocery store to make themselves seem like some next gen tech company, which they are, but they're not actually using AI. It turns out that they were using 1,000 people in developing countries and actually underpaying them to do this job and manually click that for the goods that are being taken out of the store. So I think the regulatory compliance and really like the abuse of this term AI is also something that I haven't even discussed on the podcast, to be honest, before. So it's nice that we're shedding light on that. But I think, yeah, like AI, it can not only be a great equalizer, but it needs to be used in the right way. I think that's a great way to sum it up.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about data. So, like the way that you use data is going to impact how well your AI model is, and also the type of data you have. So, how can companies best leverage their collected data to create AI models that specifically boost sales and profits? And I'd be happy to hear this from like a standpoint of like a specific industry if you want to focus on that, or just generally.
No, that's a great question. So, my always favorite is, data is the oil, is the fuel. So there's so much you can do with data. So, a lot of the companies are using data now to not only like maximize, their sales and profits, but also improving the customer interactions, and also to operationalize, their processes. So one way companies can use data is to analyze and segment, the customer data,
Yeah.
and they can determine the customer preferences and see what the customers are liking, and then make product recommendations. So I'm a Sephora junkie.
Yeah.
And my
Sure.
husband makes a lot of fun of me because I love shopping online, and their algorithms are so good based on my shopping preferences. They know that, okay, I've picked up so and so eyeshadow, then they'll recommend, oh, by the way, this and so, mascara is going to be good, right? So they're actually very good in terms of, personalizing the whole experience, and then also ensuring that the recommending more products, more complementary products. And also companies, can use, the information like Sephora does to ensure, the likelihood of conversion. So that ultimately boosts the average, order value. So yes, I'll go in to like buy, an eyeshadow, but I'll probably end up with like five additional things. So they do it beautifully. And
Yeah.
so that's just like one example, right? So companies can understand the customer preferences by by segmenting and analyzing the data, and also understand like what could there be additional like cross reference across offerings, right? So additional products then companies can also use to do predictive analytics, right? So when we talk about predictive analytics, you can think about demand and forecast, right? Depending on like certain seasons, how much products are going to be needed, and companies do that a lot, like even supply chain predictive analytics is used heavily, but even in banks it's used. So even in the retail space, Starbucks uses predictive analytics to determine like what is the right store location, right? So they will look at factors such as foot traffic, demographics, weather, etc. So they'll optimally, pick up a store location, where an ideal location for the store. So that way, it's going to bring like maximum benefit, right? It's going to drive profitability. Companies can use, the data that has been in the past to also enhance their customer operations. So H&M uses, AI chatbots, right, to handle customer inquiries, and that helps reduce wait times. And ultimately it frees up the human agents to take care of additional complex tasks, right? Because the simple queries can be handled by the chatbots, and it's a faster response time, and it also improves the whole customer experience. So it also increases brand loyalty, and more chances of because you're a loyal customer, you'll come back and purchase again and again. And when we talk about operational efficiency, which is one of the other points that I had touched on, companies like Amazon, right? They analyze their shipping and delivery data to look at what is like the optimal route, right, when they're doing deliveries, and that itself is a huge cost saving, and that ultimately leads to profits, right? Because how you calculate profit is revenue minus cost, right? So either your revenue goes up or your cost goes down. So I think these are some of the ways companies can use. And of course, like marketing is like a big thing, right? Like now companies are using data to have like this hyper personalization and market products super personalized. So that's like another area. So yeah, these are, I mean, there are many ways data
For
can be
sure.
used
Yeah.
to boost sales and profits, but these are some that I just wanted to touch on.
Yeah, I think those examples were great. And it really goes to show, once again, like the different ways that almost like companies across different sectors of the economy can apply AI. It's not just restricted to tech or anything, but rather like the Sephora example you gave, or someone like Stitch Fix and other industries as well. So, last thing I want to touch on is kind of the idea that when you're trying to apply AI, you have to put in a lot of money, a lot of effort. But it's not necessarily going to guarantee that you yield something that's going to be like extremely valuable, because making AI is hard. And I think especially at like the level of like a corporation and a company. So I want to take a look at the challenges. When applying AI, what's the biggest struggle that companies you worked with now or in the past have had?
Yeah. Um, so ultimately, it comes down to how are the companies going to scale AI, right?
Yeah,
It's easy to, work on a POC or your pilot projects, but how do you fully operationalize it?
yeah,
But in order to do that, you have to go a few levels down, because that's the ultimate challenge. But there are many things, that are behind it. So under that is data is a big challenge.
mm,
I don't know any company that says that, they have like the perfect data. Some
yeah,
companies may have really good data, but when you're talking about, scaling it across the organization, you'll often find that data is actually in silos in different divisions, right? Or it will be in inconsistent formats. And of course, quality is a huge issue. So there will definitely be data challenges. Then the other thing that I have seen is there is this talent gap, right? So finding skilled professionals in AI is definitely a challenge, as you already know.
Yeah.
But also ensuring that you have the right subject matter expertise is also very important. So if you have the, perfect AI guru, right, and the data scientists and the ML engineers and the AI strategists, but you need to ensure that the subject matters are also there. And often I find that there is this thing that people are saying that, oh, AI is coming for the job, and some people may use it for the wrong reason, to replace their
Yeah. I've
existing
seen, yeah, I've seen
employees.
all those numbers
So
before.
that should not happen. I feel your people are your real asset. So the they should be upskilled, right? So
Yeah.
it should be used to augment the capabilities. So having, both set of folks, right, I think is important. Or you upskill your existing SMEs to ensure that they have the AI knowledge. So that is another problem. And the other thing that I see is this whole aspect of change management. So you might find, the perfect people, you've passed the data stuff, you have the, talent kind of sorted out, but you'll find that sometimes people are not aligned, right? So that's where I feel change management is very important to make sure that you can manage the stakeholder expectations and everybody is kind of on board, right? So making sure that, their right communication and enough communication, clear communication, that is being done very regularly, and you are training the people, right? So it kind of touches on that whole talent gap perspective, and then also showing ROI, right? So early stage AI often struggles to kind of show proof, right? So I think just being patient, right, and also setting realistic goals and having, the right expectations and metrics, so you can actually start showing progress over time, right? These things take time. And then the last thing, which I think is very important, is around ethics and compliance and governance, right? I feel they kind of go together. So these technologies are not static. You need to make sure that you're being ethical, you're thinking about the whole fairness, privacy, right, ensuring that you're not introducing biases, or you're minimizing biases, but you need to make sure that you're being compliant. And most importantly, you have to be able to monitor and govern this, right? You cannot just implement and just let it, just go on its own and that's it, I'm done. That cannot happen. You have to constantly monitor, because the models are going to evolve, like situations are going to evolve, right? There is going to be new risk, right? So somebody has to be there to constantly monitor and govern and making sure that you're mitigating and minimizing these risks, right? And taking care of these things. So I think that I feel is absolutely fundamental to ensure that, these implementations are actually successful. But that actually kind of, leads to the whole issue of like scaling. So
Yeah.
all these actually contribute to it.
Got it. Yeah, these are some great points that you brought up. And I think, yeah, I hope like going forward, I can get more speakers on this topic actually, because it's really engaging to learn about how companies are using the AI, because most of like my work focuses around things like policy, but here and now I also like to explore like consultancies and how they're helping companies use AI, especially as it continues to be a much like further growing sector of the US economy.